Hi, my name is Natalie Hill, and I will be interviewing Miss Lashandra McClure. Miss McClure, how are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I am well. First of all, let's get a little information about you. What do you do?
Currently, I'm the Student Services Coordinator for the Career and Technical Education Division here at Hines Community College Utica campus. This is my 10th year in education. For the past 9 years, I was a special education teacher. I taught 5 years at Bolton Edwards and 4 years at Bates Elementary. I worked with students that were inclusion students, resource students. I came into the field of special education by accident. Initially I wanted to work with students that were hearing impaired, but Tougaloo didn't really have those courses, so I ended up just doing special education. And so my first year teaching, I had one student that was considered a self-contained student, so I was kind of a self-contained instructor, inclusion instructor, and a resource instructor. And inclusion is when you go into the classroom with the general ed teachers, but resource is when you pull them out to give them instruction on their cognitive level.
Okay, so what type of disabilities do you deal with in your learning environment now?
Again, this is my first year being the Student Services Coordinator, so we don't have as many students with disabilities, but I do have one student that does have a cognitive and physical disability. In the past, I've dealt with students that were intellectually disabled. The term that was appropriate was mental retardation, but recently it was changed to intellectually disabled. I've dealt with students that are developmentally disabled, autistic students, students that are other health impairment. So I kind of dealt with that range of students versus the specific learning disabled students.
Okay, so let's go to the technical side of things. Do you or have you ever used technology with your students, whether it was presently or in the past?
Yes, ma'am. I've had a student that was hearing impaired, and we had to use an FM system, and that's when the instructor has a microphone on her, and then the student has a direct feed to their hearing aid or just into their hearing, and that was one form of technology that we used. Another form of technology that we used was it's kind of, we call them like some type of board cards, but we kind of use that with children that are autistic, because children that are autistic, you have to kind of get them ready for different experiences because they're set in certain routines. So it was called a board maker. We would utilize a board maker to create stories to get them ready, such as if the student had to go to lunch, and we know that there are a lot of students in lunch. We will use the computer, create the board maker to create a story to get that student ready to experience being around all of those people.
Okay.
So that's the type of technology that we used. Also, I was fortunate to have a smart board in my classroom because my students with fine motor skills issues, we had to utilize the smart board more so than manipulating the mouse.
We have been studying what you call the actual reader, screen reader. And also we talked about like the pencil that you would use for those that are not mobile. So they would have to use it with their mouth, to actually type or whatever. So have you ever experienced those type of students?
No, I have not. Most of those students would be considered significant cognitive disabled students, and although I did work with students that were significant cognitive disabled, I didn't work with students that were just that low functioning.
Right.
But we did, at my past job, we did have a coordinator that dealt with those type of students.
Okay.
Technology is a good thing, but it's not always accessible for students or people with disabilities. For example, if a child had epilepsy, which is other health impairment, if you look at a website and it has so much on it and flash and just too much, if it's so busy, that could trigger a seizure. So we have to be mindful of that, and I don't think that a lot of people are mindful of people with disabilities when they're creating websites. If a website, okay, like I was telling you about students that can't manipulate the mouse. Okay, but if we're using the smart board, if things are too close together, that's still a problem. So the way that you have your website set up, and I don't think that they have guidelines in place to help with that, but I don't think people actually adhere to it, and they're cognizant of what's needed for people with disabilities.
What would you say need to be changed and done?
I think that it needs to be some type of control from higher up to where there's a committee or some type of entity set aside that they strictly make sure that these federal laws are being, adhered to. So we have the laws, but who's there to say that this is actually, happening? And so with everything going towards technology, it's not. We're constantly leaving those people with disabilities behind. They want to work, they want to do things, but it's not accessible to them. So I would just say we need to make sure that we're mindful, and this is how I always feel about people with disabilities. I'm not a disabled person, but who's to say, who can say that I would never become that way?
Yeah.
So I would want them to have the same opportunities as anyone else. So if I'm in the mindset of designing something, I would put myself in that person's shoes. And there's such a wide range of different disabilities. It may take a lot of time, but hey, let me check off hearing impaired. I made this accessible for people with hearing, that are hearing impaired. Let me go to the people with epilepsy, attention deficit disorder students, things like that. So if you would actually take the time and internalize and put yourself in their shoes and think about, okay, I would want this for me. That's what I would. If you make it more personal, I think people would take things seriously and try to do better.
We would like to thank Ms. LaShandra McClure for taking out of her busy schedule to come and interview with us about web accessibility and those of disabled or with disabilities. And I thank you, and you have a great day.
You're welcome.